Well, if you're like us, you just concluded watching the vice presidential debate, live preferably on the Daily Caller in Farmville. We have a whole crew in Farmville, but we're coming to you from Washington, D.C., the global headquarters of the Daily Caller. My name is Vince Colonnese. I'm the executive editor of the Daily Caller, joined by deputy editor Scott Greer, and of course, senior political reporter Alex Pappas. Gentlemen, the overwhelming feeling tonight that I'm seeing across Twitter and across certainly our readers, people like Jake Tapper, Frank Luntz is saying this was a rout. Mike Pence won this debate tonight.
Yeah, I think so. I think Mike Pence is just a stronger debater. He really was. I think Pence actually cared about being likable, trying to win over new people. I think Tim Kaine went in there and just wanted to attack Donald Trump. He just only wanted to talk about Donald Trump. So he interrupts the whole time, and Frank Luntz, the pollster, said that he was with that group of undecideds, the focus group in Ohio, and they were turned off every time Tim Kaine would jump in. And if we're just going to talk stylistically, they were really turned off by the fact that he would just keep interrupting, which kind of makes you think he went in there not really trying to win over people, but just wanted to keep talking about Donald Trump, which he did. And I think one thing that Mike Pence was really good at that Donald Trump isn't so good at is that he doesn't get in the weeds. How many times did Tim Kaine bring up taxes or some other thing? Pence would have some sort of response, but didn't get in the weeds and then take the bait, doing exactly what the Clinton campaign wanted them to do. Instead, he would say, why don't we talk about you and talk about Hillary Clinton and the other stuff? I think Pence did a really good job, and in fact, Donald Trump probably should look at that, I think, maybe as a model for future debates.
Right. Yeah. Scott, what do you think, what stood out to you tonight?
Well, I think the one thing that stood out to me is that the fact that Kaine, I think this is the Clinton campaign strategy. They put him in an uncomfortable position. He clearly is not supposed to be the attack dog, but when they have him out on the campaign trail, they're like, Kaine, attack him. And when you read the transcript, it's like, wow, this is really brutal. And then you see Kaine on the stump, you're like, this is a terrible idea. Why are they trying to do this? And they try to move the strategy towards the debate, and it was a terrible strategy because Pence didn't fall for the debate, as Alex said, and that they just moved along. They moved on to the topics, and he kept looking frustrated. There was one point where you could clearly hear him ripping paper, and he kept having facial expressions that clearly showed that he was frustrated and was not happy, and it was almost that Hillary was going to give him a tongue lashing afterwards. He was not. He didn't want to do this. So
did you notice too how he kept looking at the debate moderator, kind of like, "Come on, let me get in. Come on, help me out here." I feel like every time Pence would talk, Kaine would look at the moderator.
Pence was totally calm, cool, collected. He looked like, "I've got this," while Kaine's like, "Oh man, Hillary's not going to like this. I need to keep moving this on." And I think that's the fact that the Clinton campaign strategy, not letting Kaine do what he was better at, which the Trump campaign clearly let Pence do what he wanted to do. He's like, I'm going to be the calm defender. I'm going to give us an articulate policy provider on this thing, and I'm actually going to do what we want to do. But with Kaine, they're like, you're going to be attack dog 100% of the time. He's like, I suck at attack dog. But they still went with it, and you could clearly show that frustration on his face that it wasn't working well.
I saw tonight a lot of people who were very critical in part of the moderator who you just mentioned, Elaine, who it seemed like at times was, from CBS News, who at times would step in when it seemed like the debate was really about to take off. That Mike Pence and Tim Kaine were about to really go at it, and she would step in and intercept them. And at times, especially when Pence is sort of wound up, right? A lot of his answers would start long, and then eventually he'd get to the meat, where he's attacking the Clinton Foundation. And it was at those exact moments, whether the time-imposed constraints or not existed, that she would jump in and be like, okay, all right, let's move on. And I saw a lot of people, especially Trump supporters, who were like, hey, let the man speak. He just wants to talk about why Hillary Clinton should not be president of the United States.
No kidding. And it's not an easy job. I mean, I'm not going to act like being a moderator.
It's totally
there's tons
of
scrutiny, whatever. But yeah, there were a number of times.
You've moderated debates. You've actually moderated a debate. I know that. You know what this is like. And I'm guessing
down in Alabama, yeah.
It's a little bit different than what happened in junior high, though. I have to believe you. I mean, class vice president is a big deal in 8th grade.
Sorry, I just want to get that point out. Pappas has moderated debates of national importance, at least in Alabama.
But no, I do think you're right. There were a number of times I was like, this is a debate. Let them talk. It's not an interview. And obviously it felt like Elaine from CBS had a list of questions that she just wanted to kind of keep getting through, which I think Pence learned from the last debate something, which is that you can't always count on the moderator to bring up the topics you want to talk about. So what are some of the things that Pence got out that the moderator didn't really bring up or that Trump wasn't able to bring up last time? He brought up the Clinton Foundation on his own. He brought up basket of deplorables.
Yes.
Trump never talked about that. He was talking a lot about immigration. If you remember, actually, in the first debate, Trump never even got a chance to talk about the wall. Pence actually hit a bunch of the topics that anybody that's telling Trump or Pence the sort of things you want to talk about in debate, Pence hit those things tonight.
Definitely. I thought he did a fairly eloquent job of sort of going over a lot of what the attacks that Tim Kaine was bringing at him about Donald Trump, everything up to including, like, he didn't say all Mexicans were rapists. He said he thought a lot of them were good people. Like, he sort of like added context to what has been a steady barrage of attacks. And I thought it was pretty interesting. At one point, you had Mike Pence attacking Hillary Clinton on Bill's admission that Obamacare was a failure, that it was craziness. Yeah. And Kaine didn't even respond. So a man who became known throughout the debate for interrupting at will, like, actually to the point of incoherence. It was actually, unlike Trump last week, where it almost was like his interruptions supplemented the actual conversation, where you could sort of hear what was going on. Kaine would interrupt, and you couldn't hear anything. No interruption at that point when there was an attack on Obamacare, and he was like, he had nothing to say.
Yeah, he had nothing for it. The campaign clearly, it looks like the campaign had no answer for that.
Right.
And I think when you look at the debate, it is remarkable how Pence stayed on the campaign message the whole time with the Trump. I think they do disagree a lot. The only part I could remember, or off the top of my head, where he did defer on Trump with it is when it comes to Syria, that he did issue that they would attack Syrian targets associated with the Assad regime in Syria if they keep bombing Aleppo at the current rate, which is something I don't think the Trump campaign has officially stated on, and it seems kind of at odds with what Trump has said in terms of regards of the Syria strategy, where it seems like he wants better relations with Assad to do whatever he wants in that region. So, but
He
when
made
he comes,
made a similar sort of edge into criminal justice reform that we haven't really.
yeah, he said, "I'm for criminal justice reform."
Trump campaign.
I don't think Trump has ever said he's for criminal justice
Right.
reform. He's probably like, "Lock them up," you know. He's probably going to say like,
Oh, there
something
comes
like
the
that.
accent. There it is.
There he is. He's like, "Lock them up." But when it comes to immigration, which is something in the past, I mean, a lot of people wrote on this. I wrote on this. Is that Pence was very different from Trump on immigration. Pence was in 2006, 2007. He was one of the primary proponents of comprehensive immigration reform called amnesty at the time.
Right.
He was one of those people. But when he went up there, he said, no amnesty. This is all about open borders. If you vote for Hillary and Tim Kaine, this is for open borders, amnesty, the failed immigration policies of Obama. And under us, we're going to deport all the criminal aliens, anyone who's overstayed their visas, and we're going to reform our immigration policy. And that's something that is very well articulated, is Trump's immigration policy, very well articulated without kind of the Trumpisms thrown in. So, and that was something very surprising. I think that went over very well with the American public, who has this image of Trump, using stormtroopers to storm into everybody's house in mass deportation force, which he portrayed it as just enforcing the rule of law.
If you haven't been following politics as closely as, say, we have for the past few months, and you get finally, this is your second real foray into watching the candidates on stage, in this case Mike Pence and Tim Kaine, who do you think voters are leaving with an impression of, hey, this is kind of like a sober and better team? Who do you think anybody kind of stood out tonight for voters?
Well, I think one thing Pence probably did a good job of are those skeptical Republicans that are looking for that excuse to vote for Donald Trump. They haven't quite found it yet. They're more establishment, or they're just not as comfortable with the Donald Trump, but Pence goes and does everything that they want. Right. He shows that he's kind of more mild-mannered. He knows policy. He reassures them that he can help Trump run the country. I think if you're kind of looking for an excuse to get behind Trump, I think Pence may have kind of helped give you that tonight. Actually, and to add on to one thing about what Scott was saying about how Tim Kaine wasn't necessarily like a great attack dog, how funny was it how he kept using those apprentice pun attack lines that were just kind of fell flat? Like he first called him his apprentice.
Donald Trump's apprentice.
You're the apprentice, and then he said Hillary's like you're hired president, you're fired, and finally
Right.
Pence said something like, "Come on, man," with these like canned lines, and he stopped. I wonder how many more of those apprentice puns he actually had planned out.
It's unfortunate he didn't release them. I was waiting for him. I was like, there could be so many more. But, I mean, he could have brought up the celebrity apprentice. But when you see with this, I mean, Tim Kaine is a terrible attack dog. Most of the time, traditionally, we've wanted the VP to be the attack dog. I mean, Trump is already an attack dog already. I mean, he wakes up, he's an attack dog.
Yep.
I mean, even before getting out of bed, he's already an attack dog.
Yeah.
They don't need another attack dog. And they let Mike Pence be what he's best at, and that's being kind of this nice Midwestern guy who's able to appeal to a large swath of the population who are very skeptical of Trump. They see him as this brash New Yorker who's foul-mouthed, who's had all these infidelities. Well, with Pence on the side, you see as a calm, stable man who represents a lot of your values. And I think if it would almost be better for the Trump campaign to a lot of these skeptical voters saying Mike Pence is going to have a strong position in the administration, and when we're deciding on policy and when we're going forward things, Mike Pence is always going to be at Donald Trump's side. He's not going to just be a symbolic figure who's just there to, in case something terrible happens to Trump, he's going to be there. But with Kaine, he looked like, just totally Hillary Clinton's lackey. He didn't look like somebody who is a equal or a somebody that the candidate puts a lot of trust in. It's just somebody, go out and attack them. It's somebody, you have this job, you need to do it, otherwise, that's what you're going to have to do. And he's very uncomfortable with that.
So I thought one of the biggest moments tonight in this debate came at the very end, which was their conversation on abortion and on the issue of life. And the reaction that we were seeing, we were in discussions in the newsroom, on Twitter, was that Mike Pence really succeeded in making the case for first of all being pro-life, and putting Tim Kaine in a very awkward position where he was basically saying, "Look, I know you've been against federal funding for abortion, but the candidate that you're backing is not. She wants to expand it, and in fact, it didn't even come up tonight. But we, as the Daily Caller covered, Hillary Clinton has a very expansive definition of what she wants to do with abortion, that she thinks that deeply held religious views in this country need to change in order to accommodate abortion. But my sense tonight was that Mike Pence was very successful in fervently arguing the case, and that Tim Kaine was not successful in sort of making the pro-choice argument.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of territory that we all know Mike Pence would be very comfortable and be very good at. He is a more evangelical sort of Republican, much more than I think Trump really is, and he kind of helps Trump with that. Another thing I was thinking when we were out there, Pence does a good job of being like the calm, collected, I think that evangelical sort of guy. Probably doesn't necessarily love being the attack dog. He got out his attacks on the Clinton Foundation and everything, but you could tell he was still having to work at it. It wasn't an easy thing. One thing I was thinking, though, was imagine if he had chosen Chris Christie as his VP, of how different that would have been. This would have been a different debate. I think Christie just would have just shredded he just would have shredded Kaine the whole time over this. I mean, much more as a prosecutor as Christie was. I think the debate would have been a lot different had he gone, another way, which he very easily could have gone with Christie.
I definitely think that's right. I definitely think that's right. But, I think Mike Pence did a good job. And we've talked about this at length, but remember, and we've mentioned it a couple times here tonight, prosecuting the case against the Clinton Foundation, being able to describe the flow chart of corruption that Republicans are alleging against Democrats is a challenge for Donald Trump. He's able to just sort of sweepingly say that Hillary's corrupt, she's crooked, right? Crooked Hillary. And that's about the extent of the argument with Donald Trump. But with Mike Pence, he gets up there and he actually said something like, look, it's real simple, right? And he started describing why in American politics, foreign donors are not allowed to contribute to the political process. Yet the Clintons have come up with a system through a nonprofit whereby they take foreign donations. And then he cited the Associated Press, which most people kind of consider to be a nonpartisan news operation. And he used that, and he thought that was great, because then he took this AP story and was like, look, it's simple. Half of the private meetings that Hillary gave to anybody who met with her in the State Department were people who were also donors to the Clinton Foundation. If you had never heard that news before, if you're watching the debate tonight and you hear that, you're like, that's a pretty good line. And not only is that a good line, I have a lot of questions about Hillary Clinton now that are now wide open. And he did something I think that just Donald Trump has mostly been too ineloquent on in order to succeed at.
Yeah, and to go on Alex's point, I think it actually was a lot better than the fact that there was a calm demeanor up there instead of Christie's full-on pit bull.
Right.
And also, Christie also has those other problems now that have come up ever since the VP selection was made. So that would also add more flavor to the debate.
But
and I think it was much better that, I think in any other situation, I think Pence, with the other two possibilities of Newt Gingrich and Chris Christie, he was actually much better in this situation. And I think in terms of it being an attack, he did at some points, go back to the abortion debate, he, in some ways, but in his own little nice manner, was able to skewer Tim Kaine over abortion, because he was like talking about the Hyde Amendment. He's like, oh, the Hyde Amendment, which you have supported, but Hillary Clinton doesn't anymore, which prevents, federal funding of abortions. And he's like doing that, and you can clearly see, Kaine getting flustered and more frustrated, and he's like furiously writing, and he's like doing this, he's doing it in a very calm, he's like taking the high road, but and it's more effective in kind of skewering him on the poll, and Tim Kaine didn't have an effective answer to that. And when he prosecuted them over in a case such as abortion, which personally Tim Kaine is opposed to and is very much more to the right on than Hillary Clinton and now the current Democratic Party. He was able to put him in a tough spot, and all Kaine could do was just lash out and make more accusations against Donald Trump. So I think that in almost the demeanor that Pence put on was much better prosecutor. It was this smarter prosecutor who was more calm than his opponent and was able to make him look stupid.
So some funny news developing as we're sitting here. One is that Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway called Tim Kaine a sexist for constantly interrupting the moderator tonight during the debate. I mean, I guess that's fair if you're playing by the rules of the left here. But I thought this exceeded, I think, a lot of people's expectations for what a good VP debate was.
Yeah, and by the way, all of our followers here on the Daily Caller Facebook page that are watching us right now, I don't know how surprised we are by this, but I haven't seen a single person that says they think Kaine won. So there we go. We got Dee says Pence didn't like Kaine's smirk. Something about him is not right. Veronica says definitely Pence. Anthony says Pence. This is one of my favorites. Doanne says Kaine looked like the accordion player in a drunk polka band.
He's Irish. He can't be Polish.
And actually, you know what? Kaine plays the harmonica, I think, actually. That's like a big thing. He carries harmonicas.
I bet he's also a kazoo guy.
Yeah. So anyway, keep those comments coming.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Well, I think that was great. And, I was just... One of the big stories of tonight, and the one that everyone on the Daily Caller is reading, you might not realize that we were looking at the numbers as the debate we're on, is the fact that Tim Kaine's behavior was just so erratic at the beginning of the debate that it left so many people wondering, what the hell is going on that debate stage that Tim Kaine is acting the way he is? Clearly nervous, I think, and also but his behavior, I'm calling him Tim Patient Kaine, Canis Interruptus. You can come up with any varying description of it, but Tim Kaine was all over the place tonight, and I don't think it served him well.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I still think at the end of the day, people are going to vote for the guys at the top of the ticket. I mean, that's right. Pretty obvious. At the same time, I think Pence did his ticket, did Donald Trump a pretty big favor tonight.
Yeah, and if you were worried about Trump having, you guys have mentioned this ad nauseum, but if you were worried about any part of the Trump campaign being sort of disciplined and having maturity, Mike Pence showed that on stage tonight. There's the maturity right there on the ticket.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think if they was demonstrated as a equal ticket that you get both men on when you vote Trump Pence, while with Clinton Kaine you get Clinton as the superior, the executive, while Kaine's kept in a closet and only brought out when she needs him. I think, and that's almost the point demonstrated because the way that Kaine was uncomfortable in his role and how he was almost following a script that he didn't like. And he was not able to defend himself on the Hyde Amendment, and he had to keep to the Clinton script, while Pence was able to argue different positions from Trump. It showed that there is a equality within the ticket, and then Pence would take a greater part, just based on this debate, would probably have a greater role in a Trump administration than Kaine, while Kaine is just
I think that's right. Hillary will have a traditional conception of what she wants her vice president to be. There's nothing traditional about Donald Trump.
Yeah, when the Clintons took power, they put Gore over in the side, and Hillary was the chief. But then she failed on Hillary Care, and then they brought out Al Gore more. So she hasn't learned anything since then.
Before we wrap, I want to mention I just got a message from Facebook who tells us that here's the top social moment tonight. This is the big moment that really drove the most conversation. And it's Kaine and Pence trading jabs on who has an insult-driven campaign. That was the one moment that drove the most Facebook conversation tonight. And then again, when Tim Kaine said of Mike Pence, quote, he's asking everybody to vote for somebody that he cannot defend. And I thought Mike Pence handled himself pretty well, actually, coming out of that.
Yeah, I think he did. I think most people agree he probably beat Kaine, I think, in this debate tonight.
Facebook says 54% of the conversation share was dedicated to Mike Pence tonight, whereas just 46% was dedicated to Tim Kaine. So in some instant feedback tonight. So you're not alone in thinking that Mike Pence won. It looks like Facebook itself, just the numbers across the board, shows that he dominated the conversation.
Now, apparently our friend Joan Walsh, the liberal writer at Salon...
Oh, wait 1 second.
Wait, who do you think? Yeah.
Let me guess. What is this?
White male privilege won or something.
She thinks that Tim Kaine actually
Oh
won the
my
debate
God.
tonight.
Okay.
So we were able to find somebody
In a stunner.
who disagrees with our Facebook followers.
What book
here
did she
today.
write? What was the name of the book?
What's the matter with white people?
What's the
Yeah.
matter with white people? And what color
There's
is she?
two white people on stage. I don't know.
She's
Yeah, she's
white.
white.
She's white. I just want to make that clear too. Excellent. All right. Well, that was fun. I had a good time. This coming up this weekend, we've got the next presidential debate.
Yep.
And then we've got the Vegas debate after that. We're going to be at all of them. We're going to have live streams on the Daily Call the whole time. We're going to have tons of news stories, more things for you to consume than you can possibly imagine. And I think the cleanest and most direct news coverage in all of the press. And we hope you feel the same way. For Alex Pappas and for Scott Greer, I'm Vince Colonnese. Thank you for staying with us at the Daily Call. A lot more coverage. We got to rush back to work because we have a lot of things to type up. See you real soon.
Good night.